Good afternoon. How was lunch? Good? Okay. We're like actually awake. I feel pretty good about this. This morning, we heard a lot about what Puppet is up to and what we can expect from the product line, which is great because Puppet does phenomenal work. But I want to take a step back and talk about my favorite part of DevOps, the human bit. I like to say that I specialize in the human side of tech because I think it's fascinating. I believe that our technology is advancing more quickly than our brains are evolving. And due to that, many of the challenges we face every day have more to do with our faults as humans than the errors in our code. Again, my name is Emily Freeman. My first day at Microsoft was yesterday. Can I tell you how excited I am? I'm like super, super excited. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you all at Puppetize Live. Scaling systems is hard, but we're engineers. That's kind of our thing, right? Scaling people, that's significantly harder. Humans are complicated. Broadly speaking, companies have 3 stages of development: infancy, those awkward teenage years, and if they survive the trials of adolescence, adulthood. An infant startup is so drastically different from its adult incarnation that they could be considered different companies. Each will have a unique mission and culture. Scaling isn't just about making what you have bigger. An ant can't be scaled to the size of an elephant because the internal structure is fundamentally different. Instead, companies have to evolve. But companies aren't living, breathing organisms. They're collections of people, families, tribes, civilizations. So how do you scale a team of 2 to 20 to 200? Well, I think the answer lies 2,000 years ago in Sparta. This talk is going to focus on 3 distinct military organizations: the Spartans, the Mongols, and the Romans. We'll look at the organization of each military, how they treated their soldiers, what they prioritized. Then we'll apply those lessons learned to our own development teams and organizations. Scaling an army of soldiers or developers comes down to communication and collaboration. How do you keep people informed and working together toward a shared goal? If there's just a few folks, it's pretty easy, right? No big deal. You probably are all in the same room. You can yell at each other when you have questions or disagree about something. And you probably have the entire code base mapped in your head because you probably built it. But as your team gets bigger, more and more intersections of communication develop. And with that, more opportunities for miscommunication. There's actually a formula for this. I shouldn't be surprised. There seems to be a math formula for literally anything. Don't worry, I'll spare you the math. For a team of 5, For a team of 5, there are 10 connections. See, I said I'd spare you the math and it was just in my notes. This isn't so bad, right? That's manageable. A team of 10 jumps to 45 connections. And a team of 20 brings us to 190 communication connections. What about a team of 100 developers? Any guesses? Words right behind me. We're having syncing issues, as you might have guessed. 4,950 connections. Nearly 5,000 ways people on your team can communicate. Does anyone else feel totally overwhelmed? Because that would completely overwhelm me, like the pug that is supposed to be up there right now. That one. See how adorable this thing is? I love that. Before I continue, I want to acknowledge that scaling is messy, and it always will be. We don't exist in a vacuum. There is no petri dish in which to try different approaches and see what works. Many times, due to resource constraints, we get one shot. And if we fail, that's it, game over. But there are some things that we can do better as developers and as managers. So where do we start? With Sparta, our startup of the ancient world. They were small. At its largest, the standing army numbered 10,000, and Sparta was obsessed with what it did best: war. They also had a thing with nudity, but this conference has a code of conduct, and so that could get pretty awkward pretty quickly. Most Greek city-states fortified their cities with a wall. Spartans instead chose to defend themselves with a wall of men. That's bold, to say the least. This obsession with war started on day one. Newborns were taken to the Gereza, a council of elders, for inspection. Infanticide was common in all of Greece, unfortunately, and Sparta was no exception. Babies who were not deemed strong enough were abandoned and left to die of exposure. At age 7, boys were taken to the Agosh, a military training facility and barracks. Girls were permitted to stay with their parents. They were educated and encouraged to exercise. Unique in the Greek city-states, so yay for kind of equal rights. Spartans eschewed all comforts, and it's said that they were the only people for whom war was a reprieve from everyday life. Think about that. Their staple diet consisted of blood broth, exactly what it sounds like, and boys at the Agosh were regularly denied food and clothing. They were encouraged to steal, but beaten harshly if caught. Not for stealing, but for being caught. Everything about the Agosh hardened the soldiers for warfare. And at age 12, they were sent out with only a red cloak and expected to survive. At age 20, soldiers joined a syssitia, a sort of mess or club. Spartan peers and members of the mess voted to accept men into the group, and voting had to be unanimous. If a soldier had not been invited to join a syssitia by the age of 30, they would be denied Spartan citizenship and instead occupy a lower standing. Men were permitted to marry from age 20 on, but would stay at the barracks away from their wives and children until age 30. And they would continue to serve as reservists until age 60. All Spartans were equal and submissive to the unit. Soldiers who lost their hoplon or shield were disgraced, as the shield protected not only that man, but the man on his left. Spartans were a small tribe of intensely loyal, overworked, and underfed soldiers who bravely took on the big boys of the ancient world. The Battle of Thermopylae pitted 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, and 400 Thebans against, supposedly, 100,000 Persians. And isn't that how every startup would like to imagine themselves? Maybe without the core strength and rugged good looks. If you are getting started, when you're in that startup phase, I want you to find what you do best. Spartans were unmatched in war. If an ally were threatened, all they had to do was send one man, a single soldier in that iconic Spartan red cloak, because enemies knew that a fight with one Spartan was a fight with all of Sparta. You're too young to be worried about product market fit. Find the product that resonates with people and focus on that. You can A/B test all the things later. Hire generalists. You need people capable of solving just about any problem. Spartans didn't have special forces. Every soldier knew how to do everything. which is remarkable. They followed the same strategies, treated each other as equals. The people you need may not be up to speed on the latest and greatest tool we're all talking about this year. That's okay. They have a certain grit, a resilience, and a dogged determination to figure it out. At this stage, specialists could hinder progress by narrowing their focus too early. Keep your team agile and focused on how to solve the problem most efficiently, not how to solve it using a specific tool. Allow natural communication pathways to form. A desired path is a path caused through erosion in the soil by humans or animals walking over the same area over and over again. Communication kind of follows a similar pattern, I think, and some of us are better at it than others. Observe who communicates most seamlessly with others. And when you need to take something to the group or announce something, give it to that person first and allow them to communicate it to everyone else. Take on the big boys. Listen, when you have 2 developers and 3 to 6 months of runway, all the Silicon Valley stats say you're going to crash and burn, right? Screw that. Give it everything you've got. 300 Spartans marched right up to 100,000 Persians and challenged them to a fight. Be bold. Worst case, you learn some valuable lessons and probably lose someone else's money. Best case, you become the big boy. The Mongols are by far my favorite of the 3 organizations. They are absolutely fascinating and serve as our analog for a mid-sized team. You can consider it our awkward teenager of an organization. The Mongol army topped out at about 100,000. It is, to this day, the largest geographic empire in history. They conquered nearly all of continental Asia, much of the Middle East, and parts of Eastern Europe. No one would have expected Mongols to influence history in the way that they did. As a people, they sat quietly in the foothills of Siberia, mastering horsemanship and archery. And like most nomadic tribes who live in brutal conditions, they were tough. The Mongols and their conquests are forever married to Genghis Khan, or Chinggis, depending on whom you ask. Temujin, the boy who would become Genghis Khan, was born in 1162 to a lowly and unremarkable tribe. His father was poisoned when he was a boy, and he was left to the care of his older brothers, one of whom he murdered in a fight. So those family reunions had to be kind of awkward. As a teenager, he married Borta, his first and most influential wife. Early in their marriage, she was kidnapped. This was a common practice in Mongolia at the time, and his rescue of her proved his military mettle. He went on to unite the Mongol tribes and initiated a brutal civil war, eventually named Great Khan, ruling over all of Mongolia. Genghis was a brilliant military strategist. Under his rule, Mongols conquered more land in 25 years than Rome did in 400. He did this through a number of tactics. Mongols embraced religious tolerance. Conquered people could practice their religions freely. He promoted people on merit and brought people from lower tribes into his own while doing away with the rich and powerful families. This made him, unexpectedly, very popular. Mongol society was pretty egalitarian. Are you noticing a trend here? Both men and women contributed, and women didn't suffer from the same patriarchal domination that you see in other cultures of the same time. Minus that whole wife kidnapping thing, I haven't figured that bit out yet. Mongol society, or he reinvigorated the Silk Road, ensured safe passage for travelers, and enabled globalized trade. According to legend, a woman could carry a sack of gold and travel safely from one end of the empire to the other. That's impressive. The Mongols were uncommonly adaptable. They had no experience with walled cities, and yet they mastered siege warfare. Cities were often so afraid of slaughter that they would simply surrender as soon as the Mongols showed up. Mongols defeated nations with 100 times the manpower. which is kind of what a mid-sized company needs to do, right? You've got that product market fit. Now it's time to build an empire. So how do we apply Genghis Khan's wisdom to our own teams? I want you to avoid emotional decision-making. Above all else, Genghis Khan was a master strategist. In the early days, things are rocky. One day you land a customer that pays this month's entire hosting bill, and the next your site's down, and you have investors calling to scream at you. Reactionary businesses rarely survive. So I want you to start to think in an OODA loop. And if you're unfamiliar, it's not just a fun word to say, though I do highly recommend it. OODA, it's super fun. It was created by Colonel John Boyd of the Air Force, and it stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. This will allow you to rapidly work through problems and prevent yourself from being bogged down by fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's even better if you can get inside the OODA loop of your competitors and upend their strategy. Avoid micromanagement. Mongol officers and their troops were given significant freedom by their superiors in executing orders. As long as the larger objectives were met, Mongol soldiers could solve problems as they saw fit. In other words, they focused on what, not how. As you grow, you want to keep your team focused on the larger mission, whatever that is. Give them the room to do their job. Enable autonomy. Each Mongol soldier typically maintained 3 to 4 horses at a time. They swapped horses frequently, which allowed them to travel at high speeds for days without stopping or exhausting their animals. They had an extraordinary ability to live off the land. In extreme conditions, they could even live off their horses, mostly through mare's milk. Unlike other armies, they weren't dependent on supply logistics. Give your employees the resources they need to get the job done. Support them. And if you're in a management position, protect them. If the VP of product wants a feature done yesterday, that's your problem, right? Now is your time to embrace your inner Genghis Khan and start yelling at executives. I'm kidding, that's terrible advice. Don't do that, please. Stay small. Much like our modern military, the Mongol army was organized into small groups that together made up larger units. Embrace those small groups, close-knit, family-like structures of people that can merge into larger groups when necessary. Start to introduce structure, but keep it simple. Now is not the time to go full in on Jira and hire a Scrum Master. Instead, implement a daily stand-up. Start tracking features using a very simple tracking tool. At this stage, too much communication is inefficient, and too little will result in confusion. The last thing you want is 2 developers trying to fix the same bug. I've fixed those merge conflicts. 0 out of 10, would not recommend. Prevent yourself from falling into the trap of acting like a real company, whatever that means to you. I mean, yes, let's file our taxes, please. That would be good. But now is not the time for a formal annual review process or mandatory weekly one-on-ones. Focus. It's really easy at this stage to get excited about all the things, right? And I see a lot of founders fall into this trap. Part of our job as engineers is to push back on crazy ideas and to ask questions. Find your one market. Focus on your most successful value add. Once you have revenue, a majority market share in that area, you can go in and evade others. But for now, stay focused. If you survive the pimply, mistake-ridden years of scaling a startup into an enterprise, congratulations, you're Rome. Rome is our large-scale organization. Reliability and predictability have become much more critical. You're an empire now. It's more important to protect what you've built than it is to be a disruptor. Administration, management, and process eclipse rockstar developers and game-changing ideas. Rome was a nearly unstoppable force. and one of the largest empires the world has ever seen. Its legacy continues to influence our daily life via language, law, government, religion, architecture, and more. The Roman Empire spanned over 2,000 years, and its military structure is a graduate-level course in and of itself. Edward Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire is nearly 4,000 pages, and that's just the decline and fall. I can't possibly do it justice in the next few minutes, but I will focus on the imperial Roman army when it reached its peak size of nearly 500,000 in 211 AD. Emperor Augustus, the second emperor of Rome, founded the imperial army. Prior to him, Rome motivated soldiers with grants of land and increased wealth. But as land became more scarce, they shifted toward rewarding soldiers with a set amount of denarii after their service. For citizen soldiers, this was 13 years' salary, which sounds a lot like a pension, right? The imperial army was split into two groups, what you can very loosely consider commissioned officers versus enlisted soldiers. The commissioned officers were assigned to legions, heavy infantry made up of 5,000 Roman citizens each, long-term professional soldiers who served 25-year terms, and conscription, a draft, was used only in emergencies. In addition to the legions, the auxilia was established. These enlisted troops were recruited from the peregrini, which were non-citizen residents of Rome. They supplied archery, special forces, cavalry. Auxiliaries were awarded Roman citizenship after completing their 25-year commitment. The army also employed numeri. These were mercenaries from allied people outside the empire. We call these people contractors. Organizationally, every province had a legati, the legion commanders, who reported to the provincial governor. And that governor reported directly to the emperor in Rome, which is a much flatter structure than you might have imagined. While the legionaries held a higher status, they depended heavily on the auxilia. Legions were entirely heavy infantry, foot soldiers, and heavy metal armor. They were almost unbeatable against other infantry, but could not campaign independently, just like developers would be stranded without teams like ops and QA, and certainly security. What can we glean from Rome? I want you to break into small teams. We've said this before. We do the same thing with our code, right? When a class gets too big, we abstract logic away into a smaller component. The same principle applies to people, but allow divisions to form naturally. Each unit in the Roman army had its own standard, which was a pole and a variety of decorations. The practical use was to visually communicate to a soldier where the bulk of his unit was on the battlefield. But these standards held deep meaning. Soldiers believed their standards represented a divine spirit. They would pray to them. The symbol brought everyone together, much like a flag does for its citizens. Set a clear vision. Think of the small teams you just formed as tiny Spartas. Go back to those fundamentals and allow each team autonomy, but be clear about the broader vision. Teams without a focused goal will naturally prioritize the things they're excited about, not necessarily the things that are best for the company as a whole. Leadership must regularly communicate the direction the larger organization is headed and why. The why is even more important than the what, because it lends context and clarity. And be careful about how many times you move the cheese. It's okay to pivot when the future of the company actually depends on it. But changing priorities every quarter will undermine your credibility and the credibility of your organization. When your word means nothing, people stop listening. Become masters of logistics and planning. When you're big, logistics matter. And this is where DevOps really starts to enter the conversation and play a critical role. Romans invested heavily in an extensive and well-maintained road system. This allowed their troops to move relatively quickly as needed. While smaller armies could forage, buy, or steal food, the Roman forces were simply too big. Instead, deployed forces were regularly resupplied through a massive network of supply chains. This infrastructure is what separated Rome from its competitors, just like the work we do allows our companies to grow at breakneck speeds. For modern development teams, this is akin to project management. Whatever version you choose, it doesn't really matter, right? Extreme programming, Kanban, Scrum, just pick one and then commit to it. If you choose to do Agile, do Agile, not your snowflake version of Agile. The product team's just gonna slip this one little thing on Thursday into the sprint. That's not it. The more logistical thinking you can remove from an engineer's plate, the more time they have to do what they do best, engineer solutions. Invest in your employees. Take care of them. This means encouraging work-life balance. And if you're not sure where to start with that, don't allow your employees to work more than 40 hours a week. You may be thinking, but things need to get done. Yes, but why? Is it because we didn't plan ahead or didn't communicate with stakeholders appropriately? Emergencies happen. We all know this, right? If the site's down, we're not going to make it home for dinner, and occasionally we have to wake up at 2 in the morning. We get that. That's okay. But those situations should be few and far between. Working around the clock and checking email at home doesn't make your employees great employees. It makes them former employees. Likewise, Rome had a vested interest in the health and well-being of their soldiers. They developed a sophisticated medical knowledge and practice, and for good reason, right? A sick soldier can't campaign or defend a city. Offering generous insurance is important. So is having conversations about mental health and burnout. Anxiety and depression affect millions of us. Many of us in this room deal with some kind of mental health issue on a daily basis. Engineering can be lonely, grueling work. We literally sit alone in front of a computer punching in new commands while it spits out errors at us, literally yelling at us for not coding well enough. Simply recognizing how hard your team works, acknowledging that everyone needs breaks, and encouraging frequent work-free vacations will do wonders for the longevity of your team. Introduce those specialists, or allow your generalists to become specialists. As small teams form, sit down with each employee and discuss their interests and goals, both professionally and personally. Some of your generalists may express interest in management, many will not. Allocating team members at that stage might feel a little arbitrary, but if you allow some flexibility in movement between teams, people will slowly find their way, find where they belong. Finally, have honest conversations, no matter your size. Conflict is uncomfortable. I get it, right? But it's an absolute requirement for scaling an engineering team, and honestly, in my opinion, for being a great human. I thrive in the environment of a late-stage startup. I don't have the risk tolerance for the early days, and sometimes with enterprises, I struggle. Now you may be wondering, you just joined Microsoft. That seems pretty big, and yes, it is. I am on the advocacy team, which is new. So it's a startup within an enterprise, which is super exciting for me. I know that about myself, right? I know where I thrive and where I do my best work. People that thrive when there are 2 developers and endless pots of coffee may not transition well as the company grows and evolves. That's okay. Unhappy employees can quickly become poison for teams, bringing everyone down. An honest conversation is the best way to ensure each person on your team feels content and fulfilled by their work. Some of the advice in this talk applies to you. Some of it may not. You know your team best. Follow your instincts, but be careful about how much emotion clouds your judgment. Collect data whenever you can. It will keep you focused and inform decisions as you grow. Trust your employees. Grant them the freedom to do what they do best, solve problems. Hire people that are happy and communicative and talented. And above all else, serve as an example of someone who is fair, focused, and enthusiastic. No one wants to work for someone who won't roll up their sleeves and jump in when needed. Thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Emily Freeman.